Hey guys, welcome back to the Detour Live. Thanks for joining us again on a Thursday night if you're in Australia, or Thursday morning if you're the wheel wizard tucked away there in the UK. We've got another great show for you guys. We're going to be talking everything AusCycling with Rory Sutherland and Donna Rae-Szalinski. And I'm joined, as always, by four-time national road champion from Australia, Johnny Trevorrow. Iffy, how's your week been, mate?
It's been good, yes. I managed to keep out of the wet. I've been on the bike. I did an hour or so with the boys this morning with the Detour mob. And, all good.
Yeah, good to hear, mate. You're looking fit and well. Now, tonight's show, you must be excited again. You're excited for every show, but there's pressure because we've had a couple of rippers.
We have. The pressure is on. Well, look, we've got two rippers tonight in that. Rory Sutherland, cycling star for, I think he turned pro in about 2005 and he's only just retired. And, of course, Donna Rae-Szalinski, who's my Geelong mate. I was riding around past her establishment today, but she never came out and joined me today, but she often does. But a superstar herself, Tour de France rider, and now one of the gurus running Australian cycling, especially the road cycling. So we're going to talk to them about a bit of a mixed year this year, disappointing for a lot of us, Olympics and World Tour Championships, but a positive path for the future. So that's what we're going to be talking about. So I'm looking forward to it. All
right, let's bring them in. Rory and Donna, welcome back to the Detour, guys. Good to have you on.
Hello.
You finally worked that bloody Chrome thing out, did you, Rory?
You know those things. You know when you're meant to be prepared for something, and then you're like, "Oh crap, I got to download something extra." And then, but luckily, internet works fine, so all good.
Come on, mate. I have been preparing you for weeks. I have not stopped hassling you on WhatsApp. I need you on the show, mate, and it's fantastic to finally get you on the show. And in fact, Donna's so pumped, she's just got up.
And she left. She goes.
So excited.
Yeah. Well, guys, you're looking fantastic. We've got the branding right. Any sponsors you want to give a shout out to? No. All right, let's move on.
Donna's my sponsor.
Now, we always try and do...
Are we talking about Alcoholics Anonymous? Or
we always try and do an intro for our guests and build them up. But I think it's better if you could explain to the viewers and listeners, we'll start with you, Rory, what is your role at the moment with AusCycling?
Good question. Very good question. I started off December last year, 2020, when I retired. And Simon Jones and the others at Australian Cycling wanted to get wanted to have somebody in Europe who can kind of oversee some of the road stuff. And it's discussions I'd had with them and Brad McGee beforehand. And just kind of the job popped up as a 1 to 2 day a week kind of thing that I could work while I was figuring out kind of what I wanted after retiring, where I wanted to be and where I thought that I could probably fit in or be the most help. And then ended up with then Brad McGee leaving, job getting expanded very quickly to more days, to things to do with the Olympics and then selections, and it's been building ever since, up until the point that now took a full-time position with Australian Cycling. And I think the actual job description or the title is still in the process of figuring out what it actually is. But basically anything road, anything to do with road, European pros, and now I've actually got more. I've added to the excitement that now with Donna speaking more about the juniors under 23 projects, and then obviously with the World Championships coming up in Australia. So anything to do with the road at the moment, but what we're actually doing now, and again, it's exciting, is it seems to be crossing over into other parts of Australian cycling to the other disciplines. So communication and contact with the track coaches, with BMX, with mountain bike, all that kind of stuff. So it's pretty cool, and it's ever expanding, like a lot of jobs become.
And with your role, Donna, just listen to what Rory was saying then, obviously with the new branding of AusCycling and trying to bring it all together, I mean, is that the sort of overarching goal moving forward, to really sort of unite the different disciplines and the age groups and things like that?
Oh, for sure. That is the purpose. One of the main purposes around becoming AusCycling is to share the resources, which means also the athletes. And we can see, looking at Tokyo, for example, the crossover between those on the track and those on the road. We also have great crossover between mountain bike and road. So yeah, it's awesome that Rory and I are getting to have conversations regularly with the coaches from the different disciplines and seeing where we can combine our resources to provide more opportunities.
And what's your role, Donna? I should probably ask that first.
No, that's cool. My role is, I've got a few hats. Rory is laughing at me. My official role right now is I'm the interim director of performance pathways. My ongoing role is as manager of performance pathways, and in that role I oversee all of the camps and competitions for our Australian cycling team. Then you add in the hat where part of that is running or overseeing all of the development programs for road. So that includes the junior road teams, men and women, organizing projects for the under 23s, and any other development trips that we might do, for example, for our elite age group women. So a mixed bag.
Johnny?
So you're Rory's eyes and ears in Australia. Is that what we could say?
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Basically, yes.
I do hope, Ify, I am taking a group to Belgium in May. So we're going to take our junior national road cohort to spend a month in Belgium in May. So I can't wait to get back to Europe.
There's a few of us in that basket because
sure.
It's been a few years. Yeah.
So recapping sort of 2021, I mean, Australian culture we're pretty predictable. You know, when we're getting results, we almost go quiet and it becomes expected. You know, when the results aren't to that level that they're used to, we're very quick to point fingers, say when things are wrong and all this sort of stuff. But is the situation at the moment, it must be such a complex answer. I'll start with you, Rory. What are the key things that you're looking to develop moving forward for the program?
I don't think it's a complex answer, to be honest. I think without pointing fingers, and I think that doesn't actually help what we're trying to do going forward. I think from my side of things is we need to clearly rebuild structure. That what has been taken away for whatever reason in the last few years, we need to refine and rebuild the culture of Australian cyclists. And whether they're, again, not putting it on specific people, but if the pandemic had a part of that effect, the not being able to travel, people being away from families, the development stream that we lost in Australia, I think now we're seeing the results of all of that combined. But I think it's important that we concentrate on actually moving forward with a plan. And what the discussions I had with all the road teams at the Road Worlds was that we all need to, everybody, including myself, everyone needs to look in the mirror every now and again and actually have a reality check of where you're at and what your goals and aspirations are, and where you stand in the ranking of the world of cycling, and for us to be honest with ourselves about the direction that we need to go to rebuild what has been, I guess, lost along the way. And from my side, where that starts is with communication with people, with good people, the right people in the right positions, and people not being afraid to have a conversation, not being afraid to put your hand up and say, hey, I don't think that is correct, but doing it in a constructive way. I think that the easiest thing to do is for us all to grab a scapegoat who's not around anymore and throw them under the bus, which is a pretty standard reaction, which I think everyone has done. But if we want to move forward, we need to start actually getting those people together and changing a little bit of the culture of how we operate and how we, including the athletes, how we behave as well.
Do you think that it's one of the biggest challenges? Like when you race for Australia, I mean, it's not a lot of times throughout the year, and you've got all these other guys in other teams. Is that the biggest challenge, trying to get that chemistry and culture when it's just so sporadic?
It hasn't been before, for whatever reason. For a lot of the time, the leader of the team and the level of that leader will kind of dictate that down. So if you have a leader who's firing, who's doing all the right things, who's winning events, and everyone can see it, everyone jumps on board that train towards an event. As soon as you lose that leader, or you don't have that leader performing at the level that they were, or their leadership is not how they rally their own troops, that changes. Then it becomes definitely more difficult. So having, coming in for a national team event like in Belgium, it's how do you expect the athletes to know and trust one another if they don't have a chance to race together because they're in their trade team? So that does make it very difficult. But slowly, with some more things that we can do while the athletes are in Europe, which is most of the year, and the communication that I would like to see happen, which is, it doesn't have to be a lot. It can be coming together every now and again for either an event or just as a group, and communication. That's the word that I'll keep on using, is that communication is so key that the athlete then can buy into and be part of the journey towards a major event, because otherwise we're just selecting a team based on what we see on paper and sending them to an event without actually having them together as a group. So it's definitely incredibly challenging. And Donna knows this from the past, and Iffy as well. And it still is challenging, but I think it's up to us to, in the positions that we're in, to actually set that, I guess, the structure, but the athletes have to be involved with that as well.
Iffy?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one, mate. You hit it right, nail on the head in culture, because going back a few years, Australia had this special culture. When it came to World Championships, they worked together, but it hasn't always been spot on. I mean, we've won one World Pro Road title with Cadell, and we've had seconds with Robbie, second with Bling, with Gero, but in that one that we did win, it wasn't that easy. I mean, I know that Steve-O was in charge, and Cadell and Steve-O didn't see eye to eye. He wasn't happy with the race plan, so he took his earpiece out and won it on his own. And again, with Gero and with Bling, there were other issues. So to get back, and you look at this year with Belgium, it wasn't that cohesive. No. We had a great World Championship in Belgium, in Flanders, one of the greatest world titles I've ever seen as far as the crowd, the racing. But the cohesion wasn't there. The culture wasn't quite right. So getting that culture right is going to be your big challenge for both of you, to get a world title team or Olympic team or Com Games team that really work as one.
Yeah, and that's the biggest challenge. I think that's the biggest challenge in any team environment. And like you said, the question is how to get that to happen. And I think that's why I'm in the position I'm in, because I don't mince my words. I don't mess around. If there's something to be said, I'm going to say it straight to someone's face as well. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. And what I saw in Belgium,
the general. That's what you are.
What I saw specifically, well, it bites me in the ass sometimes.
That's good. You need a general. One captain, one ship.
Well, I want to be on the ship with other people that want to be on the ship as well. That's the difficult part. If no one wants to be on that ship with you, it's not a very good ship. We've tried that.
That's what boys are for, mate. You just throw them overboard.
But to do that, what we missed in Belgium specifically, I'm really, and again, it's shooting myself in the foot. I'm really happy at what happened in Belgium. Not results, but I'm happy at the mistakes that were made, and I'm happy at the reality check that a lot of athletes and selectors and all of us in general got. The same with the Olympics. We have to take the positive from what happened, and the positive is that you can therefore see where change is needed and where to put your eggs in certain baskets to move forward. And one of those is to not keep doing the same things, but it's a process, and it started for me with the Worlds. It started with the Worlds of like, okay, this is the group we're getting together. This is the reason why, and we're going to do it. And then after the event, we sat down and we had a good debrief with all the boys, and we all had a very good open chat, and the women as well. It was just a reality check of where everyone's at, how the team's together. And then we can all be involved in building on that of like, right, we don't want to do that again in the way that we did it. So how can we improve it? And that's where we go through it. But, you know, to what Iffy said as well and what I said before, if you don't have the leader, it makes it so much more complicated. And that's not anybody's fault. But when the leader, when a Simon Gerrans, when a Cadell's winning, the race probably never went as planned or as well. But you never have to stand up to criticism because you've won anyway. You know, when in Ponferrada we medalled with we had Michael Matthews and we had Gero medalled, and the team really wasn't cohesive at all. I raced it, you know, Matt Heyman and we had it together, but a lot of the other team about how we were doing it was not. It just didn't click the group the way that it could or should have, and it wasn't anyone's specific fault. But with that, no one speaks about it because we medalled. So we come out of it successful. So every time you keep getting all the success, we've had this endless run of success, and now we have to deal with failure. Maybe failure is a strong word, but non-success, that the level is different and our athletes have changed where their abilities are, some of them, and some are coming in, and there's a huge generational change which is being part of that. And that's what we need to focus on, and that's a difficult thing, I think, for all of us. Like criticism, we all struggle with criticism, but that's what can move us forward. And now we have to deal with the fact that we aren't as successful as what we were, and there are other nations that are coming ahead of us. You know, if you look at New Zealand, for example, who would have thought that they would step up and be above us in most of the events at the World Championships and their development stream based on their funding? You'd nearly never say that considering the size of the country and ours, but it's good. It's a smack across the back of the head for everyone to kind of wake up and go, oh crap, it's not easy. We need to actually work at this, and that'll make it better in the future as well.
So Donna, given your experience and Rory's experience, it's immense. How much of it is plucking out things that have worked really good in the past with other teams and organizations you've been connected with, and sort of blending this sort of experience to create something new that, you know, in the past we've done it sort of like this and we know that this works?
Look, I think looking at what you've done in the past is really important. So you learn from it, but you're not always going to carry everything you've done in the past forward because the environment is changing so much. I mean, the language that Rory's been using about taking people on the journey, you know, that's what we are doing right now. We have to present a vision, we have to present values, and we have to move together as a group. So
we've got a couple of live comments. Janice Ashcroft, good evening all. Jan Borman, good morning from Yorkshire. The Wheel Wizard always throws a few out there. He says, can either Donna or Rory enlighten everyone on how riders and countries qualify for the World Champs and Olympics now that there are no World Track Cups because the UCI can't get cities to run them? He said Los Angeles is still paying for their 2006 World Cup, and Melbourne won't run a track cup either. Can we enlighten Will?
We're talking road here, mate. We're talking road.
We're talking road. I can't. I'll be the first to put my hand up and say that I don't actually. My experience isn't in track doesn't mean that I can't have a look at it and talk about some of it, and what the UCI's policies are. I don't think anyone ever understands them. I think they're getting better in certain areas, but it's a bit tricky. But we're just actually currently for the road anyway, and I'll speak to road, is that we're going through. I went through the selection document, which has been probably copy and pasted pretty well for the last 10, 20 years. And we've actually having a good look at it so that we can make it fair for the selection and make it easier for the selection policy, and also fairer and more clear to the athletes. The road's easier because we have obviously a lot more events, and that's why we have, that's the track is a completely different entity based on points, based on this, based on what have you. But there are actually the track World Cups are actually called Nation Cups, if I'm correct, and there are changing. So in 2022, there are quite a few around Europe, and there are points events, C1 and C2 events, and I believe there will be possibly one held in Australia, but COVID's kind of messed up that, probably more so for Australian and New Zealand athletes than it has for European athletes.
Well, that should satisfy the wizard, I reckon.
Now, I'll jump in here because the pressure's on you two, because we have got a pretty big year coming up. So we've got Com Games in Manchester, and Com Games is always very important to Australia because we normally go so well. It used to be just us versus the Poms, but now it's changed a little bit. The Kiwis have jumped right in, and the Welsh and the Scots go pretty well. So that's big. But, of course, the big thing is we've got the Worlds in Wollongong. And that's going to be absolutely sensational, but it does put a lot of pressure on.
Pressure?
Yes, yes.
Pressure.
It's
Not
opportunity.
Not pressure.
It's brilliant.
Hey.
It's opportunity.
It's absolutely amazing. We started the Build to Wollongong with the Junior National Program this year. We've identified a 4-phase plan on helping prepare and get the best cohort ready we can. And, I can't wait. Bring it on. I love that pressure.
I don't think it's that pressure. It's just, for me, it's about planning. It's about changing some of the structure that we had in place going into World Championships in the past. And I think identifying the improvements we can make, and that is in communicating with the athletes. And I've been doing that all this year based on Wollongong. We're finally getting ideas of the course now. That seems to have taken a bit longer than what anybody has expected, which makes it very difficult. And then there's also the question mark of the COVID situation, is that I have other nations messaging me saying, are we really going to have the Worlds? Like, should we plan it properly? And to give you a heads up on all that, Donna and I have been working on a few structures with the DS grouping about how we can do that and move that forward in a better way, so that people don't just DS is generally speaking fly in for the World Championships, stay for those days, do the Worlds, and then go home, and that's their period of work. Whereas I believe that it's the process to get to that is more important than actually what you do on the ground when you get there. It's like if you do any cycling event or any sporting event, by the time you get to competition, all the training's done. That's what you do beforehand is what gets you ready for that event. And so we have a structure that's coming. It just needs to be passed by the board and budgets and what have you. That I've restructured how we approach that and the people that are going to be involved with that as well. So we have a bit of a changing of the guard with the DS's groups, and a bit more of a different idea and mentality, which it's worked very well in the past, but cycling's changed to the point where we need to evolve with it as well. So we are excited for Wollongong. I'm very excited. It is a great opportunity, and I think with the plans that we're getting together and what Donna's doing with the juniors and under 23s, which is incredibly important for the future of Australian cycling, and it's what we, unfortunately, for policy or not throwing people under the bus reasons, who have decided to remove that funding in the past 4 to 6 years. We want to reinvigorate that. We want to put the emphasis on these athletes that are moving through, so that they can develop and become the next batch of great Australian cyclists.
Couple more comments. Brett Richardson says, refreshing to hear Rory's comments about leadership, not the populism that passes for leadership these days. I hope it works and the results to follow. And Brian Smith says, need national pride. Is that a key element as well, do you think?
Donna?
Very, very special to put on an Australian jersey. There is definitely national pride in the equation, and anybody who doesn't feel that shouldn't be involved.
But we lost that, and I'm going to throw that. I'm going to throw that in here as well, and it's going to piss off some people. But what I saw this year in a lot of different events is that we lost that. We lost that as the athletes. The athletes lost that pride. I saw jerseys being pulled on like it was you were doing your day job, and it's not that. It's not what was there before, and I don't know what changed that culture. But that's a really, really important point by Brian, is that's when you see the successful teams, and we're speaking specifically about road and the Road World Championships that have just gone past. you see that. Can you still hear me? Because my whole screen just disappeared.
Yeah, mate.
No, we can hear
I'm
you.
back, sorry. What happens is that you see the Road World Championship, you see the successful teams, and you see the teamwork that was done within that group, and nearly every single rider, if you really study it in the men's and women's, nearly every single rider that was successful, or the teams that were successful, watch where the athletes were performing, and they were all performing above a level than what you would expect them to be performing at. And that last little piece, as Brian said there as well in the messages, is that pride of, I'm putting on this national jersey. I'm going to go above and beyond for this mate of mine, for this, an athlete that we believe in, that we back together, we back the plan, we've communicated about it, and we're excited about it. And we didn't have that. And that was something that we talked about with the athletes, because sometimes it's a feeling that the athletes have. So it's more about finding about, one, why it isn't there, and two, how we can help rebuild that part of it.
Now, if you're itching to ask a question, we're going to have a quick drinks break, and then you can fire it in after that. And I also want to give an example of a team in the Australian system at the moment that the culture is absolutely elite. So stay tuned, quick drinks break, and if he's got an absolute belter of a question after that.
Look at this bike. You think it's just a bike, right? But it's not. It's a bike 374 people are looking at. This guy, this girl, them, all looking at it. People from here, there, and wherever this is. People that are looking for a bike. Or just a piece of it. Amateurs, semi-amateurs, and pro-amateurs. This guy wants this bike, but with this crank and these bars. This could be the perfect match, but not this one. This girl has a bike to sell, and thousands of people might purchase it. Eyes on Bikes help grow small businesses. His, hers, yours, and the latest data and insights help those businesses keep moving. We are the world's #1 bike marketplace, with over 500,000 products and 900 brands, where buyers and sellers are brought together in a place where a bike is never just a bike. Bike Exchange, where the world buys, sells, learns, and rides.
Life is like a two-way street. It's about consideration and mutual respect. Roads are much the same. However you get around, walk, ride or drive, if we share our roads, we can all be safer. The Amy Gillett Foundation is Australia's peak cycling safety charity. Our mission is for safe cycling in Australia. Our vision is for 0 cyclist deaths. Over the last year, we've seen an enormous increase in people taking up cycling, whether it be for recreation, with the family, commuting, or even to start your own cycling career. We need to do more to make it safer for every cyclist. 20 cyclists every day are hospitalised, and 1 cyclist is killed every 10 days on Australian roads. So, the next time you jump on your bike or hop in your car, remember to practice the 4 C's. Be courteous, calm, considerate and conscientious. Every cyclist death is preventable, and we all deserve to get home safely. Please donate to help the Amy Gillett Foundation make the roads safer for you and for me.
Thanks again to Bike Exchange and the Amy Gillett Foundation. Iffy, fire away.
Well, it's just, you were talking about the culture just before, Rory, and it made me think of the team that really is, exemplifies that at the World Championships. And it's the Italians. You know, they are all different teams now, but they put that blue jersey on and they seem to work together. The Dutch have done it so well, and the women too, but not so much just lately, I've noticed. You know, there seemed to be a little bit of, that rivalry popping up, and they haven't worked quite as well together. But the Italians are the ones, and the French did so well in a world road title this year. They worked as a team. So it's important. Even at the top level, the biggest pros, put that national jersey on and you should be able to come together.
Yeah, but like Rory said, they've got superstars as well. That helps, you know. You've
No,
got
but
like
that often makes it harder. That often makes it harder. The fact that they're superstars and they're rivals, but they put that blue jersey on, and the French did it this year, bang, and they ride together. It should make it. It should be easier if you're not superstars.
Iffy, culture is like fitness. You have to work on it. It doesn't just happen.
Exactly right.
Well, one team I wanted to mention is the Aussie Boomers. You know, you look at what they've done and their development, and Paddy Mills and Joe Ingles are, you know, pivotal in that. But particularly Paddy Mills, the way he talks in interviews, the way they deal with crisis. You know, going into the Olympics, Ben Simmons doesn't want to play. Now, if that was a culture that was fractured, the reaction could be, oh, you know, we're disappointed, or, you know, No, he came out publicly and said, no, we're going to wrap our arms around Ben, because, you know, the culture we have is you're a boomer for life and we're going to support. And it was so positive. So all the language was positive. And then when they did win the medal, you know, he went on a tour and had them at the Sydney in Perth, and they had a boat ride with all former boomers, and they were all wearing the medal. And you feel connected to the history of that team. And when you sort of go through pockets of team, you think of the development of Australian cycling, so many stars over the journey. It's almost like once you retire, that's it. It's like you just form a pro. There doesn't feel like there's that connection and bond to even the history of it. Is that a fair call, do you think, Rory?
Yes and no. Yes and no. And on my side, and I don't have, you know, I haven't looked into the boomer story as much, obviously, as you have. But there's good and bad to that as well. I think you can wrap your hands around. But the other side of that is I've seen a lot of wrapping hands around a lot of athletes to the point of bubble wrapping them all and telling them how great they are. And then, you know, maybe I'm harsher than that in what we're doing. But I've seen the opposite reaction to that, whereas they really think they're the best and they go in with an arrogance. And that's something that we seem to have, not in all the disciplines, definitely, but I've seen it in a few different areas. And I'm not putting it just on track or mountain bike or road or any women's or men's or any group in general, but I've seen it quite a lot across the board of this privileged attitude that we seem to have got a high horse that we're on, that we're the best at what we're doing, and the honesty and the reality is we're not, because if we were, we'd be winning everything. And I think so I think there's definitely, I think in every team situation and every, you know, the boomers, it is a good example. It is a great example. There's a lot of that, but what Iffy said about the Italians is spot on. It's what I said, is that, you know, you watch the Italian women put together a sprint lead out and they beat the best in the world by someone who shouldn't have won necessarily. Shouldn't a bad way to say it, but wasn't basically the one that you would think would have won. But how they raced the race at the end of the day together as a group is what made the difference.
Iffy?
Yeah, no. Well, I think we move on. But I'm excited about. I don't know much about the road course for Birmingham. Is it a tough one, or what's it like?
It's a bit of a mix. It's like let's call it a city or a town circuit, like a lot of them generally are. It's very similar to, from what I understand, because it only just came out, the official course. It's probably quite similar to Gold Coast. What was it, 4 years ago? So it's kind of like a opportunist yet sprint type semi-classic kind of course, and a very, very technical time trial with lots of corners. But the complication with Commonwealth Games is the distances are very different than what you would race in a general, specifically on the men's. The distance of the road races is less than 200k, whereas the men's road race in Wollongong is going to be, I think it's like touching 270 or nearly 280 next year.
Yeah. Yeah, so it sounds like it could be a Caleb Ewan, Chloe Hosking type course by the sounds of it. Very early stages.
It could be, but what I don't want to do is pigeonhole specific athletes. If we're talking about culture and change and working together as a team, if the team's not working properly because of that leader, that's not a reason to take a leader to a race. there's other opportunities that we can do. And the other part is that what we haven't done in the past recently is giving opportunity to athletes that are younger, excited, proud, working specifically with some of the under 23s this year to the Worlds was something that I did not think that I was going to get as much out of as what I did. It was so eye-opening of how down-to-earth, passionate they were with nothing, as opposed to turning up with their nice cars and nice watches and going into a bike race. Yeah.
Well, the thing that the road has showed us, particularly in the last couple of years, these young Aussie guys are winning races that people aren't expecting. So I think that's also good. Do you think that's good at making some of the older guys a little bit more accountable to go, oh, shit, hang on, not even guaranteed a spot here?
But we haven't lived in this space for the last couple of years with COVID because we haven't been able to get them to Europe, and we haven't lived in the space much for a few years before because it wasn't a part of our the program we were allowed to run. So this is going to build energy. It's building energy already. Like Rory was just talking about, we got the under 23s back to Worlds this year. We're running the junior programs, and it filters up, and it actually does. They contribute to the culture very strongly.
And if we lose the development stream, which is what we have lost, and again from people's decisions over the last period, which is in the process of change now because clearly it didn't work. We select teams. We selected the women's road team based on we only just had enough athletes to be actually be able to start. So there was nearly nobody else in Europe that could have raced. And that the reason behind that, and that is not giving discredit to any of the athletes that were selected saying we just took you for this reason. But what it did open the eyes to was like, well, who's the stream coming through? Like, who else? What options do we have? We didn't start a woman in the time trial or the men's time trial because we didn't have anyone. We didn't have anyone, one, that put their hand up, and two, we didn't have anyone that was coming through the system or has come through those state institutes or whatever that needs that opportunity to move forward because they just weren't there. So, and that's part of the men's was a little different because there was more to work with. And there was a lot, there's nearly 30 World Tour pros this year, Australian World Tour men in Europe. And then you have an eight rider team. So there is that fight to get in the team. In the women's, there wasn't a fight because there's not enough riders, and that's not the fault of the athletes that we have. It's the fault of the system that has been created or has been disrespected the development stream that we used to have, which is where I came from, and a lot of the other athletes who we have performing like a Caleb Ewan in the men's, like Michael Matthews. They've all come through that system and are very successful. And so we need. And what we're trying to do is rebuild that, but it can't just happen with me and Donna. It has to be across the board.
A really exciting thing for me to share with you, Dan, if he knows about this already, is our national teams in Santos in January. The men's and the women's national team is going to be comprised mostly of the riders that we named for Junior Road Worlds this year, but they weren't able to travel to Worlds. So they will be, along with a couple of pros or elite riders, they will be representing Australia in Santos. How cool is that? That's
awesome. You're talking about riders that are hungry. I'd tip that group will be super passionate. And that structure is brewing in terms of, nothing is given. It has to be earned. And that would be a key part of turning that culture around. Like, when you pull that jersey on, you've earned it. You haven't been given anything. So
that's actually what made the Santos Cycling Festival such a great event last January, because we're all disappointed it's not a World Tour race, and I can by day two you'd forgotten that it wasn't a World Tour race. The race was so brilliant. Young Luke Platt was just coming out and all that, but all of those youngsters just stepped up, and we're going to see that again. So I'm excited.
Maybe they'll hate me for saying it, but maybe that's what it should be.
Yeah.
I get the financial side, but Stewie, development,
Yeah. Andy Matthews got a question for you. Do Rory and Donna know all the under-23s who are based in Europe riding on continental teams in 2022? You do?
Donna should, but by the look of Andy's avatar picture, he looks like he's about that age.
Well, I think it might
could be. I could be wrong.
Be his son. I think he's messaged us before. You think he might have
but
a
if
son
not,
that
if
rides,
not, he looks very young. So congratulations, Andy. You've done something right. Donna does keep an eye on that. You know, my area of more expertise is obviously in Europe. That's where I'm calling you from because I live here full time, and Donna keeps an eye on that. But that's one of the things that we really need to pay attention to. You know, there's only so much we can find on the internet. So there are the athletes that decide to go a different path than Australian national team to get to a different point. But we need to, you know, I'll put it out there that they should contact me, that they need to contact us and let us know that they are racing in a certain area, because that creates, that puts them on the radar as well. So we do try as much as we can to know where everyone is and where they're racing, but sometimes the data we get or the people that let us know, it's just not there.
It's one of the key elements when people bring you on board and want to create change. You know, it would have been really difficult in previous times where you come up against roadblocks. You know, you've got a vision, you want to do it certain ways, and then roadblocks. People go, no, you can't do it like that. Do you feel that you've been given the keys and the support to go, right, I want to make change, or I want to have an effect, I can do that?
Donna?
Over to you. We should not tell them our mantra.
No.
Or do you,
I think if you know
feel
Rory
in general
and
that, yeah.
Rory
I don't do
and I are
roadblocks.
not people who take well to being told we can't do something. We find a way, don't we, Rory?
There are little ways to get around certain roadblocks in a good and legal way, shall we say. Like you can jump over them or you can go through them. But I think and it's a discussion I had with an athlete yesterday, is that I said, look, we have and I've said it to Donna, and I'm like, my kids are sick of hearing, and I said, but failure is the best catalyst for change. So if we fail in certain areas, and we can call Tokyo in a great part failure in cycling, I think we can all agree on that, and certain world championship events. And again, it's not just directed at track cycling or road cycling. Or mountain biking. It's pretty easy to think about it that way. But if you mess it up and it doesn't work, the roadblocks kind of move themselves. Because people are more open to change. And so, but I think at the same time, the worst thing we can do is rush into it and go, right, well, this didn't work, so we're going to change everything. And that's the same with people as well. And I think that's part of the culture that Marnie, the CEO of Australian Cycling now, is trying to do, to create as well, is that, you know, maybe there's employees or staff within the organization that with the right direction could be doing a better job. Or by being given a different opportunity, or being spoken to in a different way, because everyone is there for a reason. And some will get lost, some will be moving on or have moved on, and other new ones will come in. But some people have the opportunity now to change or improve or come on the journey. Because when you take a new journey or a new direction, slowly you start to have people every year. There'll be some coming off and in until that culture has changed.
Iffy?
That's wonderful to hear. And the good thing that you're talking about is that's what I'm starting to get the feeling that's happening at the top end of at Cycling Australia as well, or AusCycling, whatever that new name is. But anyway.
Not that hard, John. AusCycling.
I
can't remember.
But what we have to do, guys, is we have to be patient. It's not a click the fingers thing. And this is something that I'm really bad at doing, is being patient. But I think a lot of the things that I'm learning here as well, and I'm experienced in one area of sport, not in management of sport or not in management of athletes. It's things that I'm continually learning along the way. But is that a knee-jerk reaction is also not necessarily the right reaction, and development and rebuilding things takes time. You don't get a house from one day to the next. So I know there's a lot of people who are throwing a lot of stones in Australia, and I think they've got the right to do that. I don't disagree, but there's a constructive way to do it. And then I think we need to also be aware that there is positive change and we are trying to create it. But if we keep getting stones thrown at us the whole way through, how can we move forward? Are we going to stop doing it? You know, we want to create that change and we want to be back on the top. Otherwise we wouldn't be doing the job. This is not no one's making millions here, guys. This is a government organization.
But look, I'm excited about next year, and I'm excited for a whole stack of reasons. One, you know, okay, we weren't successful at the Olympics, we weren't successful at the World Holes, but hey, we saw some great young men and women coming up through the ranks, and I think you guys are bloody fortunate to be in this position to have the keys to the car that could turn into be, I don't know if it's a Ferrari, but it can be close. And I think it's going to be a great year. We've just touched on Wollongong, but that's going to be huge. I mean, let's go back to Geelong. No one knew how great that was going to be. It was a wonderful week for Australian cycling. And just the one thing, I hear that it's a very tough course, a little bit tougher than what they thought it was going to be. What have you heard, Rory and Donna, about just how tough that course is?
I can't tell you that because I'm not privy to all the information either. But
and if you did know and other teams didn't, you'd stay sure.
But then it's to an extent. It's coming out next month. It's going to be less than a month till the launch of it. We've got a rough idea, you know, but you can see everything online, and you know we have a planned strategy going in and an idea that we're building on now. So it's and a side part moving, you know, not moving away just from Wollongong, but the discussions Donna and I have had is that when the Olympics come back to Australia in 2032, and if we are successful as a nation in cycling across the board, and Donna and I are not part of the organisation, I'll be the proudest person you'll see. You know, that's the end goal for us a little bit, is to how can we rebuild things, because it will take time to get to that point. So Wollongong can be successful with the things that we do now and the athletes that we have, but we need to be realistic as well moving forward that, you know, it's a process to get there. I think we can be very successful in Wollongong if everybody gets on board with what we're attempting to do together and do it as a group.
So is that the thing, Donna? Like, if we were to have this chat in 12 months from now and you were to look back and go, you know what, this is a success, a successful year, take results out of it, what are the key things you'd love to see and look back on?
What I would like to see is lots of numbers of proud Australians in the teams across all, this is specifically at Wollongong, across all disciplines and genders, that we have really competitive riders racing together as a team and showing this is what our future is going to be. That's what I'd like to see.
Yeah. Fantastic. Anything you want to add? I know these guys are super busy. It's been a fantastic insight into where things are. Donna, you got your finger up?
John, do you want to come on a road trip with me to Wollongong later this year and we can have a look at the courses?
Oh, I'll be there with bells on. I'd love to. I'd love to.
I've had a Rexona on that today.
Can I add what I want to see in Wollongong? Can I do that,
yes.
Or is that only for Donna?
It was, but you can have an input as well, mate.
I want to see the athletes. I want to see us try. That's what I want to see. It sounds bad. Like, I want to succeed as much as everyone else. But it was the same in Leuven, is that if everyone, I said it to the athletes, if you're not physically able to do something, who am I to say that, oh, you should have been in that front group? What I want to see is I want them to go, I want the athletes specifically and the staff to go through the process, to do the best we can, to give us the best opportunity to do the best with what we have and not give up. And I'll be as proud as punch if everyone turns up at the camper, the bus, the hotel after the race in every category, and they're destroyed from doing all they actually could, win or lose or do anything. I would like to see people try and be accountable and follow the strategy, be on board with the strategy, be part of that strategy and that direction, and that makes it a successful event, not the amount of medals that we have at the end of it, even though I want them as much as every single one of you.
Great answer, mate. Well, we really appreciate you guys being on the detour. And yeah, I mean, culture is essentially people, you know, and they've got two fantastic people at the front end of the ship driving things moving forward. So I think that will make a lot of people, including athletes, excited because once they're on board, there will be change for the positive. So you're doing a great job, guys, and we appreciate you being on the detour.
Thanks, guys.
Pleasure.
No worries.
Sensational. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys. Speak to you soon.
I was going to add the one last thing in.
What?
I never got
Bakerits.
to mention the Bakerits, mate.
Well, that's why I left. You knew it was coming.
Because Rory, it's even on his Palmares. Yeah,
Oh, yeah?
Bakerits when he rode the Bakerits. No, he finished 9th overall, but it's on his Palmares.
One of his proudest moments.
There you go.
Fantastic interview. Anything you want to add before we wrap things up, Johnny?
No, sensational. Great to talk to the people in charge. And Donna's taking me on a road trip. I'm excited about that.
There you go. Make sure youtube.com/Detour Podcast. Like, share, subscribe. Tell your mates. Appreciate all the support. And we'll be back again next Thursday, 6:30 p.m. Australian Eastern Standard Time for another episode of the Detour. We'll see you guys then. Have a great week. Cheers.
This is the winning ride on the Tour de France. Benjamin Sutherland has